Heavenly Father, God, we thank you so much for this opportunity to come together, to have a conversation once again, trying to find a hope in this very chaotic and seemingly depressing world. And God, we are so grateful for the guests that you have brought us, and we know that you are going to speak through us, speak through him to us through his story and his insights. Bless this program. Bless all of us here at Message. In Jesus' name, amen. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of What's the Message? I am your host, Claudia Allen, and of course, I am here with my co-host, my editor-in-chief, the lady who runs it all, the podcaster extraordinaire, managing editor, Esquire attorney, Carmela Monk Crawford. And we are so excited for today's episode. There has been so much happening in our world, and really just not enough time to even digest it all. We had the privilege and the opportunity, Carmela and I, to attend the National Action Network's March on Washington this past Friday. And man, it was such a powerful, powerful experience. Carmela, what are some of your reflections? How did you feel being down there? What are your thoughts on the march?
Oh wow, what can you say? Because it's so big. Number one, the march is so big, and the people that were coming. I was in the line. You
Yeah.
know, think about having a protest in the age of COVID, where they have to check your temperature before they allow you in the protest. So this is a different
Absolutely.
day. But there are people who are committed, and the line to get in had to
Yeah.
be a couple miles long. Okay,
Absolutely. Oh,
a
facts.
couple of miles long, and it was hot, 95 degrees, but we went out there and we, as they preached and they taught and they I don't even know what the word is, the chants, everything that I was a part of was so inspirational. But more than inspirational, regardless of the stories that we found,
Mm-hmm.
the most important part to me, Claudia, is the fact that we were there.
For sure.
Because there's plenty of people coming from all walks of life. The diversity was very evident. I had a conversation with one young woman. I had to go up to her because she had pink hair, white young lady, had elbow pads, knee pads, complete riot gear with a medic pack
Wow.
and a metal helmet with a red cross on it. So she's learned how to be a medic at these protests, and she's from
Wow.
Portland. And the night before that, in Washington, when there was a little dust up between the police and protesters for the following day,
Yeah.
she helped someone who had a broken leg. So it's a
Wow.
different where there's a million stories, and people are coming there because of those stories and because they want to see a change. I'll tell you this one last thing though. I came up there on the scene on Friday, and I
Mhm.
saw a beautiful, almost a gallery of posters with George Floyd's image on it.
Yeah.
And I was so impressed. I thought maybe this was George Floyd's family, because we know at the march it was going to be the different families of people who have been lost to racial violence, been lost to for lack of a better word, for the police interactions, right? And
Absolutely.
so I thought that this was the family, but it turned out there's a collective of groups, a cooperative of artists who created this image of George Floyd, and they wanted people to carry this. And this woman said to me, I don't think I can carry this all day. So I took that poster,
Mhm.
and it was with me all day, such a powerful reminder. And we sat there in that front where the press was, and I held that poster when George Floyd's family came by, and
Mm.
all of his friends. They all had 846 on their black t-shirts,
Yeah.
and they stopped and tear. It was like a funeral all over again. where
Yeah.
people stopped and they were going and they had to face this fact, and then to look out over the crowd and see all of the people that were there in support of
Mm.
their relative, their loved one who was gone. It was such an amazing experience. And like I said, the most important thing is to be there and to show our solidarity with justice. That's what we're about.
Man, that I second everything you said. I'm wearing one of the T-shirts that they were handing out there at the march. Don't wait till I'm a hashtag. It was just such a powerful experience to be able to see over 200,000 people gathered
Mm-hmm.
on the National Mall, literally for the purpose of protesting and opposing police brutality. I think
Yeah.
it's a once in a lifetime kind of an image that kind of gets seared into your brain, seeing that many people around the reflecting pool,
Mm-hmm.
really gathered across race, nationality, religion, gender, sexuality. Everybody and their mama was there. And I think that was such a powerful thing. And just as you said, so many came and chose to be very intentional even about how they protested, what they wore, the signs they brought, the props that they used. I met a guy named Jay who came with a noose around his neck to kind of symbolize the power that this is our modern day lynching.
Yeah.
And so there are just there's so much there, but as you said, it was truly an honor and a privilege to be there. I ended up meeting some guys, and they let me into the press box. This black guy,
Yeah.
he was like, yo, just come in and get the shots you need, and if they kick you out, they kick you out. So it was a beautiful space to have so many that are just like, hey, we're in this together, we're working together, we're trying to figure out
Mhm.
how we can all chronicle this thing, how we can all enjoy this historic moment. And then to hear the granddaughter of MLK himself speak words of power and conviction for her own generation. It was just, listen, it was amazing. But we could go on and on and on
Yeah.
about this.
But democracy looks like. I love her.
Yeah, I think the thing that really got me
Mhm.
was coming home,
Mhm.
off of that high, body sore from all of that walking,
Mhm.
um,
That's right.
and then to kind of get the notification that Chadwick Boseman had died, from his 4-year battle with colon cancer.
Mhm.
Man, that thing messed me up. I was not ready at all for that kind of news. I don't think any of us were really. When you think about it, you don't want Black Panther, King T'Challa
I know.
himself, and even beyond that, I think the thing that's so fascinating about Chadwick Boseman is his entire acting catalog is one that is always of portraying our heroes past, present, and future.
Mm.
um and I think that's something amazing to really consider and think about when you consider his loss and what that means for us.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. It was such a beautiful um when as I've looked at his life, two things
Mm-hmm.
that stood out for me, especially, people said one, he's had this battle for 4 years. And during this time, he is like he stepped on the gas,
Mm-hmm.
as he realized his life could very well, by the time they discovered his colon cancer, it was stage 3. And
Yeah.
so in 4 years, he's like, I'm going to do everything I can do to ensure this legacy and to make sure that my talents uplift people. And right now, that's the biggest inspiration I have heard in a long time.
Yeah.
So, I love, I hate that he's gone, as Black people, what Black Panther meant to the entire diaspora.
Yeah.
That came at a time when we needed that hero, that mental escape, and then that reminder of what it is, our destiny is calling us to be. So it is a tremendous loss, one that is very symbolic in addition to the loss of this young man's life.
Yeah. Man, well, we see all of you in the comments saying hello, good morning, hi, family. And so we say good morning, hello, and hi right back to you. Thank you so much for joining us again this Thursday morning. We want to hear from you in the comments right before I introduce our guest this morning. What did you feel? What did you love about Chadwick Boseman? Let us know in the comments. How did that pain you? Did it pain you at all? Dialogue with us. Let us know. I am super excited about today's conversation because not only do we have someone who is a powerful preacher, but we have somebody who has a powerful story, someone whose testimony along has just mixed with his training and his passion in ways that has produced so much good change structurally within our church as well as within our communities. And so I am excited to welcome and introduce Pastor John T. Boston II. He swam with humpback whales in the South Pacific and trailed cheetahs on the hunt in East Africa. But John's greatest joy comes from helping people overcome their pain and live a life of peace in Jesus Christ. Over the past 16 years, John T. Boston II has served in the Seventh-day Adventist Church as a pastor, conference administrator, and international evangelist. Pastor Boston has focused his ministry on being one of the most effective leaders in transformational evangelism, specifically through community impact. In 2015, he was appointed as a task force member to President Barack Obama's mentor initiative, My Brother's Keeper. He was a faith leader for this initiative, and he has also been a sworn officer as a chaplain for the Columbus Division of Police and a member of the U.S. Department of Defense's 87th Joint Civilian Orientation Conference. This is the most prestigious outreach initiative of the Pentagon, and John was the only faith leader to be invited. These opportunities reflect his ability to lead in the church and the broader community of humanity. After serving as a conference evangelist in New South Wales, Australia, he returned to the United States and currently serves as the Associate Director for the North American Division of the North American Division Evangelism Institute, and he is also an Associate Professor for the Seventh-day Adventist Theological Seminary. John is married to Carla, and they have one miracle child, Riley Madison. Carmela, I know that you have an even deeper, more intimate relationship with Pastor Boston, and I want to let you just kind of share with the people. I know both of you have some powerful stories to share between the two of you and your families. So let's let the people know a little bit about you guys.
Oh, you know what? We got to talk because, well, first of all, John Boston, he can tell the story better than I could. I was a PK and I was a child when our families crossed paths and destiny. Is that correct? You know, John's family is from Fort Lauderdale, or they were when my family met them, or around Florida. Can we hear you? I don't know if we can. And so they were from Florida when their paths crossed. You tell us what happened or how that worked, John Boston. I asked my mother, please tell me that.
No, listen, well, one, I'm so grateful to be here with you. Both of you women, Carmela Monk Crawford and Claudia Allen, are just absolutely inspiring to my journey. Your heart and tenacity for breaking through the difficulties and frustrations that we face as a people, and being reconciliatory in your efforts and trying to find paths forward. I just want to just give you honor and celebrate both of you. And thank you for what you've done. But I was telling Claudia before we started, when we were in the green room backstage,
Yeah.
that in some ways, if it were not for Carmela's father and mother, I would not be here. Because when my parents were young people and they decided to become Seventh-day Adventist Christians, it was Pastor Monk who baptized my mother in South Florida. And so I probably wouldn't be here. Maybe I'd be a very wealthy person some other place, but I know I wouldn't be here. And I am absolutely grateful for that forever, always. Every time I see her, I tell her I wouldn't be here without you. So thank you for sharing your dad with all of us.
My mother is a former member of Pastor Boston's, and she, one, that's testimony to your ministry to bridge the gaps. One day I came home and I was on a way back home, and I was traveling, and it was time to go to church, and I was like, I don't have anything to wear today, Mom. I don't think I can go to church. I had on jeans and a sweatshirt, and she said, you can come to our church like that anytime. Yeah. She said, we're going down. And my mother, she's like, we have Kiki Sheard at our church this evening, so you need to make sure you come on. And so Pastor Boston has been able to bridge that gap across generations and styles and tastes and everything like this. But the reason why you're here today is because God has, I don't know how much more the Lord can slip into your personal portfolio of deep experiences. All right. Because you've got enough to share, to spread around. But we are here today because you have in your ministry, and I'm going to start with this, the leading from your pain. Leading from your pain. And when Claudia reads this bio of this young man still who has gone all around the world and who has, had these adventures and has a beautiful family and is ascending in your career and in your ministry, one would not look at you and think that there is any pain there. So I would love to talk to you about leading. What is the story of your pain and the catalytic nature of it?
No, I think I'm at a place in my journey right now where I am really leaning into the notion that the poor in spirit are blessed. And we often act like we have it together. And it's really a Pharisee mindset. And the Pharisee mindset is that if something gets messed up in your life, well, who was the one that committed the sin? That's the question that we ask. But the better question for the humble heart, and this is where I am, the better question is, Lord, help me to be more faithful, because if the enemy is attacking, it is because he sees me as a threat. And I think that for my journey, when I was a little boy, my parents adopted me at 3 months old, and they raised me in a very loving home. I grew up in a Christian home. I went to Christian school my whole life. I'm a big proponent of Seventh-day Adventist Christian education. I think that we need to do more. We've got to stop putting so much money in campgrounds and put more into developing future leaders. And that's just my shot across the bow. But with that being said, with all of the love from my teachers and amazing mentors in my life, I still carried with me, if I were very transparent, a sense of rejection. And when it's hard to explain if you're not adopted, but it is not like a spiritual adoption, because when God adopts us, he is already our father. We are accepting his fatherhood. But when in a human relationship, when we're adopted, that means that somehow, some way, we had to be separated from our biological family. And in instances, that's a good thing. But so for me, with growing up, with all of the love around me, within me, I became a people pleaser. And my hurts from rejection were different than someone who had not been adopted. And it was really in my adult life, later in my ministry, that I had to really come to Christ and say, Lord, why is it that it hurts me so bad when people don't like me, or when people don't invite me, or when someone doesn't see my worth? And that translated into relationships. It translated into my leadership. And it was happening that way because I did not acknowledge that deep down inside, as an adoptee, I wanted people to accept me. And I think that as leaders, we may not be adopted. Adoptees will either be rebellious. I mean, there could be a lot of things, but two really prominent features of the personality profile of an adoptee is that they will either be rebellious or they will need affirmation. They'll need it. And when I say need it, I mean that. And I'm sharing this because I think we would be better served if we shared our brokenness with each other, if we shared how we hurt with each other. And there's strength in that. And so I carried that. And I think in my personal life, it wasn't until I accepted just a year ago, I accepted that, or two, maybe a little more than that. I accepted that it just is gonna have to not matter if I'm ever gonna get through this. And that's what Leading from Your Pain is all about. This is a brand new series that I'm sharing, very vulnerable. I'm sharing about an accident I was in where I had a traumatic brain injury in Columbus, Ohio. People don't know it, but my administrators were talking about my disability package. It could have eliminated my professional ministry, my efforts as a professional minister. I couldn't speak properly. I couldn't write properly. I couldn't say my name. And so I share that. And we, in the midst of all of that, now the thing that in my mind made me acceptable, being a minister of the gospel and being a pastor, the very thing that in my mind made me acceptable was taken away from me. And so about 3 years after that, I finally got out of therapy. I was in therapy for 23 hours a week, speech therapy, physical, and I didn't share this. People didn't know this. Nobody knew how bad it was, but besides my very close family, but it was bad. And it was scary because I was there, but I wasn't there. I knew what I wanted to say, but I couldn't say it. I knew what I wanted to write, but I couldn't write it. And so about 3 years after God delivered me from that, I took a call to Australia and served there. And I've always been in pursuit of finding ways to reach non-believers. I don't know if some people think I'm a good pastor or not. I think I'm better at reaching people that are not my members because I see the whole city as my member. The mayor is my member. The neighbors are my members. The police are my member. All of these people, we have to find a way to reach their hearts. And so in coming back from Australia, I took this DNA test. And I'm going to shut up for a little bit so we can get to another question. But I took this DNA test and I sat on it for a little bit. I held on to it. A friend encouraged me to do it. And finally I did. And this was going to change my entire future forever. And I'll tell you about that, but I'm sure you might have another question or so.
No, it's beautiful. You can talk all you want. I guess we're here to discover. And I think that's, I'm curious because you didn't kind of, or I'm curious to know more about where this pain was taking you. Did anybody ever say to you, maybe you need to find your biological parents, or this people pleasing that you have is a part of being an adoptee, or did you just think that on your own?
No, it was no one encouraged. Well, I shouldn't say no one encouraged me to find my biological family. I had a very good friend, Tom Evans. He's the outreach coordinator out in Oregon Conference, and he encouraged me. He was that friend who cared enough to make it uncomfortable, like take the test, do the test. And for years, I thought, I started, but I never really gave it good energy. And I'm sharing that with you, and I'll tell you why. Because I believe there are a lot of spiritual leaders who are bound by the acceptance of others. And they are bound by being feeling, especially in the Black work, especially with Black leaders, because not only do we have to deal with the difficulties internally, the intra difficulty, but we have to deal with the inter difficulties that we face. And what I mean by that is we, like James Baldwin said once, we're constantly in a state of mild rage. And I talked to Claudia earlier about her sermon, Eloquent Rage, because not only do we have to be pastor for people who may not see things the way we see them and serve people who may not think the way that we think, but then we know on some level that our work and our efforts are hindered because of the nature of the racial climate in America. And so these stressors are exacerbated. So for me, being adopted, it was another layer of stress for me that it translated into depression, anxiety, fear of rejection. And fear of rejection is one of the most binding problems that we face, especially our Black spiritual leaders, many times that don't want to stand up for what is right because of the fear of fallout, the fear of consequence, and because consequence would be that people wouldn't like what you have to say. And I'm gonna tell you something, and I'm coming back, I've worked with ministries that help prostitutes get off the streets. I've worked with ministries that help immigrants land safely, whether in this country or back home in the country that they are trying to flee. I've been to the Syrian border and worked with displaced people in the greatest humanitarian crisis of our time, millions upon millions of displaced people. But I have never received the backlash that I got when I started. So I've supported police officers as a chaplain. I've worked with the federal government. I've worked with the Pentagon on a project. I have been, what I'm saying is I work with women. I'm a big advocate for the breakdown of misogyny in our church and in corporate structures. But I have never gotten the backlash I've gotten from when I put Black Lives Matter in front of my effort. And so I'm saying that to say this. In my journey, my pain and my hurt, it bound me from shining the brightest light that I could shine. But today, I'm so glad I can say I'm free from that. I'm not free because of something significant that happened 6 weeks ago that I'm going to share with you, but I'm free from it. This significant thing happened because I was set free from it. There was something that shifted in my life and in my heart where I arrived and decided I am not going to be afraid for people to not like me. I am not going to be afraid. If anything, I want to go to sleep at night. And I'm not preaching. I'm just telling you my victory. And when you've been set free, you can't help but tell people about it. But around the time when I decided that I wanted to be free from not caring what people think, around that time, there was a shift in my entire life where I got a response from a cousin who wrote me on Ancestry. And he said, I see we're connected. And the first person I was connected to, the person most closely connected to me, basically told me they didn't want anything to do with me. They kind of, it's not blocked, but basically no contact on Ancestry. And so that rejection was really stirred there. The wound was really open there. And when I got this message, a couple of months ago, 2 months ago now, he said, let's get together. I said, I'd be happy to get together. So I went over to Illinois. He was only an hour and a half from me. And this is my cousin. This is my biological cousin. This is the first person in my life that I have met in my biological family at 38, almost 38 years old. So we connect, we hit it off. We have a good time. We become really good friends. And he had not found his biological mother. And so both of us now are cousins, and neither of us really knows our biological mothers or family for that matter. He was adopted as well. His journey was a lot more difficult than mine. And so from that, I posted it on a site called DNA Detectives. And when I posted it, in that context, they've got hundreds of thousands of followers, and they're search angels who help people reunite. And I shared the traumatic brain injury, and I shared the depression and anxiety, and I shared all of that with you because I want to show you how the person that dwells in the secret place of the Most High will abide under the shadow of the Almighty. And that's why I had to share all of those things, because what I think are the most difficult moments of my life, there's a time that came where they passed and I don't even remember the hurt. And that's when you learn to lead from your pain, because you embrace it as a part of you. I was struggling in a master's program. I did a master's in peace and social justice with interfaith action. And one of my professors did not know that I had a traumatic brain injury, and I was struggling. Claudia, Carmela, I struggled, man. I cried. I ain't gonna lie, I cried, man. There were times when you ever close your computer and you just feel like this is just it. There's nothing I can do, and it's just you just go to sleep. It's just
that's it. That's
it. Eat some ice cream and go to sleep. Not vegan ice cream. Go get some Rocky Road. Yeah, and I've been there, man. And so I was struggling, and he wrote, and I finally, because I didn't want to admit that I had limits. I didn't want to admit that I was poor in spirit. And finally, man, in humility, I just said, listen, I am struggling. I don't think I can finish this. And I shared my story with him. He said something to me that literally changed my whole view of myself. It impacted me so deeply. He said, John, I wish you had told me this months ago. He said, your problem is not that you can't do it. It's that you're trying to do it as the John you were. Mercy. You're not trying to do it as the John you are. And let me tell you something. A flood of liberty filled my heart. And I immediately understood that I cannot write as I was. I have to write as I am.
All right.
I cannot research as I was. I have to research as I am. And that's when the pages are bound together and you accept that you are a single story, and you begin to hear your story beyond the pain. And that's what my new series is all about. It's embracing that and holding on to it so that other people will say, if this fool is willing to share his brokenness and he's telling me about healing, then I want to be that kind of fool too. So I shared it on DNA Detectives, and the search angel reached out and she said, John, you don't know me, but I'm a researcher, and I saw your picture, and this had thousands of likes, and hopefully I can share it with you in the comments in a little bit. But she said, with the information that you have, I can find your biological mother tonight. I was like, this lady crazy. this lady crazy. And so I was getting ready to speak in the Cayman Islands. I've said U.S. Virgin Islands, but it was the Cayman Islands in Georgetown, and virtually. And I said, hey, give me a second. And she watched the sermon. And as soon as the sermon was over, she sent a message. She was like, okay, that was a really nice sermon. My grandfather was a preacher. Let's get to work. This is what I need. And I'm going to find your mother tonight. And so I gave her everything that I had and that she asked me for. And that was about 9:30 that night. 9 a.m. the next morning, I got up, I looked online. She had worked through the night. She said, John, she sent me a picture, newspaper article, an obituary from people that died. She said, John, this woman here is your biological mother.
She was certain.
She was certain. As a matter of fact, she said, the only way this woman is not your biological mother is if her mother had another daughter that's the exact age as she is, who gave a child up for adoption in the same place and at the same time as she did. That's the only way. And so it's a possibility, but it's improbable completely.
So in that moment, because I'm looking at the comments and I see that your biological mother.
She's on. This
is my son. This is my son. How beautiful! But in that moment, speaking of the pain and that sense of rejection, where were you in that moment? Were you prepared to reach out to her?
I think for what had happened in my life in the days leading up to it, and sometimes, Carmela, and you know this, I mean, you have been a champion for so many and for so long, man. You come from champion blood with your mom and dad, but I think we find in leadership and this is in my series, it's maxlifeevents.com/lead. I'm going to start, it's going to be live September 11th. There's some short clips I'd be happy for you to look at. Please register. That registration means a lot to me. There's over 30 churches that are participating, and this is not for believers. This is for people, it's targeted for people that have no faith experience or a resentful faith experience. And so I have to say that there were some things up until just the days ahead of meeting my biological family that God was shaking loose in my life. And up until that moment, my biological mother and her husband of 21 years, I call him dad. I have no problem with that. He's an amazing guy. They just say it just wasn't time. It just wasn't time. And I know you're struggling. And I know, and I'm speaking to somebody right now, I know you think you've put in enough. And I know you think you've done it too long. You just can't bear it anymore. I say that foolishness all the time. But let me tell you something. 38 years in that single moment meant nothing anymore. Wow. I didn't remember the 38 years anymore because something had been shaken loose in my life. And so now I was free by the Spirit of God to experience what it would be like to meet my biological family. I wasn't free. Sometimes we think that we'll be free when we get what we want, but what we don't know is God has given us a glimpse of what we will get after we have been set free.
Okay, I get you now.
That's so good. That is so powerful. Why do you think that there are some people who don't move forward? Why is it that people kind of hold on and say, you know what, I'm not going to make this step. I'm not going to make this leap?
My family supported me. So support is really critical. Tom Evans supported me in a critical way. And I think that sometimes having the wrong support corner is a part of it. But then we don't build, and I'm saying this because this is my experience. I had not built up, I had external support structures, but I had not built up internal support structures. And when you're a leader, your internal support structures sustain you by the Spirit of God when the external support structures fail you. And let me unpack that. I can unpack that in like 20 seconds. Let me unpack this in 20 seconds. Externally, people can only encourage you so much. Internally, there has to be a resolve to embrace the encouragement. And that comes by it doesn't come by desire, because the human heart is deceitfully wicked above all else. Who can know it? It comes from surrender. So it's not about strength, it's about surrender. And when you say, God, I am willing to stay in this place until I learn what you want me to learn, that's when the freedom we experience pushes us to the next place. And that's how your internal support works. Internally, you have to be resolved. I'm going to stay in this fight, not until I get tired, but until God says this fight is over. Right. And knowing that no matter how long it takes, 38 years for me, no matter how long it takes, I'm going to stay in it, because my victory is not in who I defeat. My victory is in overcoming myself.
I'm hearing some people here. There's some people watching this right now, some marriages, some families, people in some graduate programs like you mentioned, people on jobs or just in calling. They're not seeing things work out the way they want it to. But they're blessed by this word today. I'm blessed by this too myself, because that is the story of my life. It's just a long haul, long game. That's the way it goes. I'm looking on the comments. I see also your mother-in-law and your all kind of people are on here. I would love, because I said earlier before we got on. I watched the videos, The Adventures of Riley. I'm a Facebook follower of your daughter.
Y'all follow my baby, Adventures of Riley Madison. Y'all follow her.
She's so funny because I'm looking at one of the videos that you did, and she is definitely a digital native. She had her little lip gloss and she was leaning into the camera as you were doing things. I just love this. Tell us, give us a little snapshot of these different families that make up John Boston. I would love to know, and then from your family, right? Your adoptive family to your wife and daughter to
Right.
your biological family, because I want to ask some questions after that. Tell us a quick profile of who they
Sure.
are.
Well, my parents that raised me, my real parents are my dad and mom, John and Margie Boston, who your dad and mom were instrumental in seeing them become part of the Advent movement. And they're here. Mom, can't wait to see you again. My mom takes COVID very seriously. I ain't leaving this house until they cure it. So
Yeah.
praise God for her. And so my mom and dad are here. And then I have my wife's parents. My wife's parents really have been my best friends for 20 years, or more than 20 years now. And we were close before Carla and I even dated or got married. And so they're part of my life. And then my biological mother and father, they've been in my life now for just 6 weeks. And my biological mother, and so then there's my wife. My wife is a brilliant communicator, and she supports me and my ministry in the way that she does. And then my daughter is from the Adventures of Riley Madison. She's a miracle child. We were in the doctor's office and sitting there in Atlanta at a clinic, fertility clinic, and they said, look, we just cannot increase your chances much more than this. And so we didn't know it at the moment. We had been trying for several years, but when we got to the very end, the doctors, when they told us we can't pull this off. At the very end, we didn't know it, but we were already 2 weeks pregnant. My wife was already 2 weeks pregnant. So 4 weeks later, we found out that the doctor was speaking a prophecy that he could not fulfill. And so only the Lord's word is final over our lives. And so all of these people, Claudette Barrett is on. She, was the founder of Speaking Hands, and she was a mother to me as a child. I had Lois Farrington Johnson Ware, who recently passed. I had so many mentors. Carlton Bird was one of he is my brother. I don't even know if we feel like we're not brothers. And so these are people who poured into my life. And so let me not even go down the list, but all of these people make up my family. My mom had 12 brothers and sisters. We ate at my grandmother's house every Sunday. I've got a host of cousins. My father had a ton of brothers and sisters and siblings, nieces and nephews. And so we all grew up, and I grew up in a very close-knit, strong family. And what I'm saying to you, even with all of that love, whatever's broken in you, ain't no man on earth can fix it. It will have to take heaven to fix what's in us that's broken. And so, that's kind of how I am and who I am. My daughter, we love her adventures at the Adventures of Riley Madison, but those adventures mean more to us than they mean to other people, because we think it's so important to give her a experience, and that's a gift we give our children, and imagination. But I want to finish the rest of this story before our time runs out. Is that okay? Dr. Rupert Bushner was one of the persons that poured into my life. But I want to, in finishing the story, Dr. Keith Burton, I got to say his name, because if he watches this, he'll say, what about me, Doc? What's up? But what I want to say real quick is, even over the past 6 weeks, my biological family is Caucasian. And they're between Mississippi and Tennessee, ATV riding, gun toting, hunting, and sweet tea on the porch folk. And let me tell you,
exactly where I was going. This is why. Go ahead.
This is my family, and we saw each other just yesterday. We were together. I was in Chattanooga. They drove over to see me. I'm at the Grand Canyon right now, traveling, getting ready for this brand new series at maxlifeevents.com/leave, which you need to register for. And there are, but let me tell you, Claudia, Carmela, we never talked about black and white.
Yeah.
Not one day, not one moment. We never talked about racial disparities. It was just, we were family. My biological mother and I talked on the phone, and when we finally, I texted her and she said, oh my God, I lost a son many years ago. I said, what do you mean? She said, I gave him up for adoption to protect him. And Now you'll hear this story. I've got a brand new, there's a YouTube video coming out, and I hope Message will be able to share it on Friday with all of your followers. And that YouTube video, it shares her side of the story, because I'm a product of rape.
Mercy, Lord.
My mother was raped.
Wow, wow.
And by one individual, and the man that she was with in her third trimester, not the man that raped her, this is the person she was in a relationship with. He was very abusive, and she, in her third trimester, he beat her to get her to miscarry me. He tried to kill me in her third trimester. But what you have to hear, I've been able to put together, talking to my mom, Margie, that my mom and dad applied to adopt a child, and they thought it would take over a year to be approved. And they got a call, there's a boy that has just come in. And if you're willing, we'd like to place him with you all. And they said, we're willing, we'll come get him. You know, we're happy. And so they were applying to adopt a child at the same time my biological mother's partner was beating her to destroy my life.
Jesus.
So she kissed me goodbye in that hospital, and she made an ultimate sacrifice to protect my life. So what I thought was 38 years of rejection,
come on now,
years of protection.
Come on, sir.
She was protecting me. And you have to hear her story. That video is going to come out on Friday, and we want to share that with you. But with that being said, the picture I'm trying to paint now is that, so finally we set a date. We said, we're going to meet, we're going to get together. So I drove down. She was, man, let me tell you, Carmela, she was literally an hour and 15 minutes from Oakwood University.
Wow.
My entire time, Dwayne, he called me, her husband of 21 years now, whom I adore. He called me the day after. And this conversation probably is one of the most meaningful conversations to me that I've had since I've met my family. He called me the day after I talked to her, and he said, this is Dwayne, I'm your mother's husband. And I want you to know, on the first night the first date we ever went on, and I've seen the place where they met, and where they first met each other. I've been there, been to it. And he said, on the first night that I met your mother, she told me she had a son that she had to give up to protect, and that one day he was going to find her, or she was going to find him. And your mother has never denied you. She never denied you. And I still have a lot of feelings. I've had to go and get a counselor to process, a therapist to process everything. And I encourage you to do that. If you need that type of support, it's a sign of strength, not weakness. And so when he shared that with me, you know, she asked me to forgive her for giving me up. And I told her, I said, Mom, I don't have to forgive you. I have another word for you, is thank you. Thank you for giving me safe passage. I have been to 42 countries, 6 continents. I went to Christian school my entire life. I experienced no trauma. I was never touched inappropriately, beaten inappropriately. I got beatings, but it was never abuse, and never abused.
Wow, wow.
And so my journey was protected in that way. And when we hugged for the first time, she held me and she whispered in my ear. She said, you are my son. I have not held you since the day I let you go. And I love you, and you are my baby boy. And in that moment, the arms of God were over us and around us. And you can see the video on my Facebook at John T. Boston II, or at Adventures of Riley Madison. And then the YouTube video with her story is coming out. But the whole story you'll hear in my series at maxlifeevents.com/lead or /pain for the brand new series. And so what I'm sharing with you is that it is Carmela in my pain. I didn't do what I did with the Pentagon, the 87th Joint Civilian Orientation Conference, or what I did with the White House as a faith leader for Barack Obama's My Brother's Keeper initiative. That didn't happen until I had a traumatic brain injury. I didn't go to Australia and participate in leading the highest number of baptisms in that territory for 30 years until after brain injury. I didn't meet my biological mother until after God set me free from some other things that were binding my heart and mind. 5 years ago, I could not read or write. I could not speak without wiping saliva from falling down my face. Today, I'm a professor. I was just admitted into a doctoral program in missiology, mission, because I take an anthropological approach to soul winning and not just theological alone. And I believe you can't reach culture if you're not a part of culture. You can't identify if you have not identified. And so, with that being said, this is a part of my story. I've shared with you how to hear the full story. And when I look at it, I can't believe that God has been so good to me. I don't deserve it. Don't know why. But what I do know is that when he, whoever the Son sets free shall be free indeed.
You know, your story obviously is touching a lot of chords with me and everybody else. So as we're listening to your story,
Absolutely.
the work that I've done in my life has been to, or one thing that in your story that really strikes a chord with me is the thought of a child not having that forever home.
Yeah.
And that sense that they can rest in the
Yeah.
arms of a
Wow.
safe family.
Wow.
And to know that not only did God deliver you and preserve you into that forever home, now he's turned it around so that you can experience the truth of your story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I just am so blessed by that. I'm so blessed. I don't even have any questions. I'm gonna sit here and wipe my tears, Claudia. So.
No, I'm with you. I'm literally just like, wow. I think the thing that you said that really touched me was when you said that you realized that it wasn't 38 years of rejection, but it was 38 years of protection.
Yeah. Yeah.
And man, that's a lot of work to be able to come to that, and emotional and spiritually. But I'm very grateful that you shared with us so vulnerably right here, and as Carmela has said already, it's beautiful just to see all of the familial groups that you have in the comment section right now, just going in like everybody, is like, that's my son. The in-laws are like, that's my son. The biological people is like, that's my son. Your adopted parents. So it's like everyone is like, we recognize that there is a reality that in this story you could feel overwhelming rejection.
Yeah.
And so because of that, we are going to give you some overwhelming affirmation, some overwhelming arms wrapped around you to reassure you and let you know you are wanted. I like to have that like contrasted with what you're sharing with us. I just think it's so powerful. And I pray that people really heard your story and heard the encouragement that you provided, and even the steps. I think you were very clear
Yeah.
that God played a role in your protection and deliverance.
Mm-hmm.
And therapy played a role in your protection and deliverance, and your support system, your family, your different families. So I want anybody that listens to this who is dealing with any kind of pain, whether it is you are healing from a physical illness or disability like you spoke about, or you're dealing with rejection, maybe you were raped, maybe you were abused. There are so many pain points, so many trauma points that we really touched on in today's conversation. And our prayer is that you really hear that you don't have to do this alone. You do not have to do this by yourself. You can both have your internal community, your external community, your therapist, and most importantly, you serve a God that cares and is concerned about the things that have touched you, your pain points, your points of affliction. He is not only touched with them, but is concerned about participating in your healing and restoration. So our prayer is really that this testimony, this conversation blessed you as much as it's blessed Carmela and myself. You know, Pastor Boston, I think you're probably the greatest marketer we've brought on the team on the show, because you were plugging this thing from jump, and that is critical. Okay, you know, you got to say it at least 7 times for people to remember. And so now that we are at the end, I want you to just hit them with it again. Let them know, what is the series, where can they watch it, how can they get registered?
Well, you can go and register at maxlifeevents.com/pain. Okay. I had a mini series that's maxlifeevents.com/pain. By messages permission, my sister, Carmela Monk Crawford, we will share the link to that with you, but also, and it's free, it's absolutely free. And again, I want you to keep me in prayer, because we're doing this series in Oregon, and you know, Oregon is the most secular context in North America. And so we're going for the hearts of people that are looking for these answers. And the YouTube video is going to drop on noon Friday, at noon on Friday. And that's my mother's side of the story, a biological mother's side of the story. You need to hear her side of the story to really see what God protected me from. And so that's going to be Friday noon, and we'll make sure you have that link as well. But that's maxlifeevents.com/lead. And I hope that, you know, you decide to register. Follow me on Facebook. I've got, you know, I just say it one more time. And 5 years ago, they were talking about putting me on disability. And today I'm living my best life, man. I'm living my life. It's golden. And I ain't apologizing for it either.
No,
and
thank
so,
you. Sorry, not sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
I remember that. I remember how my mother felt when this thing happened. She was so afraid. And you talk about the layers of family. He's got church family too, and church parents and everything like this. I want to ask you one last question about the being in, because as we look at your story, your life, your being is at the nexus of a racial movement. You know what I mean? You described your family. Your life, your being is at the nexus of what was a crime story that started out.
Yeah.
And I would love, you know, Claudia always does this, and I'm not trying to usurp your cue for the hope in the headlines, Claudia, but I guess I kind of want to hear a word from you on where we go from here racially, given that you have discovered and your family has discovered you. Is there something in there, some hope for how we live together going forward?
Yeah. I am a big proponent of the difference that we make together. And I believe in collaboration, finding pathways that seem to not exist in nearly intractable situations. And for me, I've had to embrace new elements of my identity. It doesn't change my identity, but it grows, it enhances. An apple tree is always an apple tree, but it's not always the same size. It's not always the same. It doesn't always have the same kind of fruit bearing on it. And always apples, but they have to grow and they have to change and evolve. And so what I'm saying is that my hope is that you are willing to consider that if you are not covering ground in the changes you want to make, try to find new tools to incorporate. Try to find broader opportunities. Look for people to collaborate with. And with your mom in Columbus, Ohio, Carmela, she was such a huge support. When I had that accident, she was one of the first people at my bedside. She came to visit me and care for me and love on me and pray for me. And I think she probably put some oil on my forehead, if I remember correctly. That sounds right?
Or a sock around your neck. You know?
Yeah. I'll share something with you that she shared with me, and she said we cannot be bound to only one solution. There cannot be only one single solution. There are all types of solutions in education, in voting, in relationships, in exercising the rights that are available to us so that we can nurture the rights that should be ours. And so what I'm saying to you is that in my biological family, when I show up, I do not show up as Black John Boston, the Black son or the Black uncle or the African American brother. I show up as son, as brother. And that relationship in and of itself means so much to so many people. I've had thousands of people reach out, literally thousands of people reach out because this story encourages them, because it reminds us that we are a part of the human family. Are my people oppressed? Yes, they are. Do we need to fight for rights? Yes, we do. But we have to incorporate more modalities than those that we currently do. Do what you can. Own your voice, and make sure that if you're going to do nothing, you just transition to doing something. And if you're doing something, make sure you're doing more, and just constantly take those steps. And so as far as Black and white and the racial challenges we have in America, there's hope for our future. And Jesus Christ, of course, is our great healer. I'm saddened by the number of Christians that promulgate hatred. I'm saddened by the number of people in positions of power and privilege that are to represent Christ's work, and instead they represent the annals of Satan's halls and his hatred for humanity. And that's probably the worst problem we have, are people that say they're Christian and won't stand up for oppressed people. But what I will say, as far as hope goes, our ability to make a difference is the greatest threat to the challenges we face. And so never deny. That's one of the stressors we face as Black people. It's one of the stressors we face as spiritual leaders. We feel powerless when in fact we are the most powerful people on the planet, because we serve the creator of the universe. And so I want to encourage you in that. I do want to share, my brother, Michael Kelly, is he's just my brother. I mean, he gave me a birthday tribute. I play that thing like once a week, man. It's just such a powerful thing. But Michael Kelly at Mount Rubidoux, this is one of the instances I'm sharing. Mount Rubidoux in Riverside, California, they decided to build a counseling center. When I say build, I mean a network of support. And I'd encourage you, if you're stressed, you're anxious, depressed, feeling rejected for whatever reason, maybe you experienced rape, you were adopted, you experienced abuse, whatever it is. Maybe you're just stressed from the things that are happening in America right now. I want to encourage you to reach out to them. And I think that I know that they can help you.
Man. Well, guys, you have it. That is the hope in this story, in spite of all of the pain. And we know that we serve a God that has not only the power to engage in our healing and restoration, but he has empowered us to be agents that participate in the healing of others. And so I want to encourage you to check out all of the resources that Pastor Boston has just mentioned, especially the one over at Mount Rubidoux. So with that hope in mind, that I want to show you guys a quick video of a message at the march last weekend on Friday. As we kind of started off this show, we recognize that there is this show really is about pain. It's about the difficult things in life. And we know that the racial tensions in our country are a difficult thing that we're dealing with. Police brutality is a difficult thing. But I think that these pictures, I think that these images might bring you some hope in the same way that I believe Pastor Boston has really spoken hope over us in this moment. Check it out.
say this much because this is history. I don't know about the other generation, but this generation, we want to erase it.
As we like to say here on What's the Message, that there is always hope in the headline. And so we pray that you found some hope in Pastor John T. Boston's story. And we pray that even in the midst of what we feel is intense racial division, that you find hope in the fact that over 200,000 people gathered together on the National Mall, declaring their commitment to come together to end that division and to end that kind of abuse. As you all know, this podcast is hosted and sponsored by Message Magazine, and it doesn't happen without your support. So thank you for tuning in every Thursday morning. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for sharing. Make sure that you do just that again. Make sure that you make sure that you share this conversation with somebody else. If it was a blessing to you, then we know that it will be a blessing to someone else. But of course, we also need you to donate. So make sure that you visit our website at www.messagemagazine.com and make sure that you donate. Make sure you subscribe to our bi-monthly print issue. Make sure you get the Bible studies that you need, the tracts that you need, all the products that you need to not only receive the hope and restoration that you need, but to be able to be the hope and restoration that someone else might need. Thank you so much for joining us. And we look forward to seeing you again next week, because next week is going to be an amazing conversation. We have the one and only Dr. Myron Edmonds coming to the podcast. Dr. Myron Edmonds is going to talk with us about what it means to be a frustrated leader and how do we lead out of frustrated places. So I'm telling you, you don't want to miss it. He has written a powerful, phenomenal book on this. And literally the conference was last night. I mean, it headlined a series of powerful speakers, and you are going to want to know about this information. So make sure you tune in with us next week, Thursday, 11 a.m. As always, same time, same place, just a different conversation. And so I'm excited to see you then. And I hope that you have a really great rest of your day and a really great rest of your week. All right, bye.
Claudia, I think the one other thing that we have to remember,
Our behavior is definitely influenced or impacted by,
I'm a Seventh-day Adventist, and we know that we're
excited that with the powers of Zoom and the like, we can still the eating of certain animals.
headlines. I am your host, Claudia Allen. This is my chief executive.
Right. so many churches are actually
80% of the affiliates, ABC affiliates here in the United States, picked it up.
Not telling the truth and going back to let's just dip this
some
water
of
up.
the issues. And so we live our lives working. If you think about
brother from
most
another mother, the pastor, Richard Mark, and I'm telling you, you know, we handle the heavy stuff. We do the heavy stuff.